What if James Bond has taught audiences almost everything wrong about British spying? Real intelligence work is usually not supercars, casino tables, and perfect escapes. It is paperwork, surveillance, weak sources, office politics, false stories, and people treated as expendable. Before we expose the quiet tricks behind British intelligence, please like this video and share it. Subscribe to the channel, because the closer we get to number 1, the less glamorous and more disturbing the secret world becomes. Number 20. Billion Dollar Brain, 1967. Billion Dollar Brain is the wildest film here, but beneath its giant computer and frozen battlefield is a warning about outsourced intelligence. Michael Caine returns as Harry Palmer, who has left government service and works as a private detective. A mechanical voice sends him to Helsinki with a package, where he discovers that American billionaire General Midwinter is running a huge anti-Soviet network through a computer. The network depends on paid agents, stolen material, false reports, and workers who barely understand the plan above them. Palmer's former superior, Colonel Ross, pulls him back into service through pressure rather than patriotism. Palmer is useful because he can enter a private organization without looking like an official British officer. The film's famous sequence comes when Midwinter's force drives across the frozen Gulf of Finland. The computer declares the route safe, but vehicles begin breaking through the ice. A perfect digital plan collapses because reality refuses to follow its data. The scene is enormous, yet its lesson is simple. Intelligence becomes dangerous when leaders trust systems more than people on the ground. The movie exaggerates almost everything, but it understands deniability. Agencies often work through cutouts, contractors, old contacts, and unofficial groups because distance protects the government if an operation fails. Palmer survives by distrusting every briefing, ally, and machine claiming to know the whole picture. It also warns that private intelligence groups can magnify a leader's fantasies because their survival depends on producing the answer that leader has already chosen. Number 19. The Jigsaw Man, 1983. The Jigsaw Man turns the fear created by the Cambridge spy scandals into a cold game of identity. Michael Caine plays Sir Philip Kimberley, a former head of British intelligence who defected to the Soviet Union. Years later, the KGB gives him a new face and sends him back to Britain to recover secret documents. The story was inspired by the shadow of Kim Philby, the senior British officer who secretly served Moscow before escaping there. The film's important idea is that intelligence services fear insiders more than strangers. Kimberley knows procedures, personalities, filing systems, old secrets, and the habits of British officers because he once commanded them. Catching him is not only about stopping a theft. It is also about controlling embarrassment and hiding how deeply the service was penetrated. The most memorable scenes follow Kimberley moving through London, while both British and Soviet teams try to identify the man behind his altered appearance. Every meeting becomes a test. A familiar phrase, an old relationship, or a small emotional reaction can expose him. His face may be different, but his habits remain evidence. That idea reflects real tradecraft. A cover identity requires more than documents and clothing. It demands a complete pattern of behavior. Officers study routine, memory, accent, reactions, and personal ties because identity leaks through tiny details. The film also shows how defectors remain trapped. Moscow does not trust Kimberley. Britain wants to use him, and neither side sees him as fully human. He matters only while he carries information. Please take 1 second to like the video and tell us in the comments which spy film fooled you into believing it was realistic. And subscribe now, because the next 18 movies move deeper into recruitment, surveillance, betrayal, and government secrecy. Number 18. Triple Cross, 1966. Triple Cross follows Eddie Chapman, a British safecracker who became a German agent and then worked for MI6 as a double agent called Zigzag. Christopher Plummer plays Chapman as charming, selfish, clever, and difficult to control. That personality matters because intelligence agencies recruit useful people, not always respectable people. A criminal may lie easily, handle pressure, cross borders, and manipulate suspicious men. Chapman is imprisoned on Jersey when German forces occupy the island. He offers to spy for them, receives training, and is sent into Britain. Instead of completing his mission, he contacts British authorities and proposes a deal. He will feed Germany controlled information in return for protection and a pardon. The British accept, but watch him closely, because a double agent can change sides again. The film's famous operation involves an order to destroy the Vickers aircraft factory. British intelligence creates convincing fake damage using controlled effects, broken materials, and carefully arranged evidence. German reconnaissance accepts the deception, and Chapman returns to his handlers as a hero. The scene shows a central intelligence skill, giving an opponent proof that confirms what it already wants to believe. The film adds glamour, but the method is sound. Double agent work depends on believable reporting, strict message control, and small truths surrounding a larger lie. Chapman cannot invent everything. His false information works because it is mixed with accurate details. The operation is a performance built by the agent, handlers, technicians, analysts, and planners hidden far from the field. Trust remains temporary on every side. Number 17. The Tamarind Seed, 1974. The Tamarind Seed looks like a romance between Julie Andrews and Omar Sharif, yet it is really about recruitment through intimacy. Andrews plays Judith Farrow, a British Home Office employee recovering from personal loss. While vacationing in Barbados, she meets Fyodor Sverdlov, a Soviet military attaché. Their conversations seem private, but both governments quickly treat the relationship as an intelligence problem. British officers suspect Sverdlov may be approaching Judith because of her access. Soviet officers suspect Judith may be bait. Neither service believes two people from opposing systems can meet without hidden instructions. That suspicion is realistic, because intelligence work studies relationships. Affection can open doors that money, threats, and formal recruitment cannot. The most memorable scene has Sverdlov telling Judith about a tamarind seed said to resemble a human head. She sees mystery in the story, while he dismisses it as superstition. Later, the seed becomes a private signal between them. A romantic object also functions like covert communication, harmless to outsiders, meaningful to the people inside the relationship. As the story moves toward defection, British intelligence must decide whether Sverdlov is genuine, whether Judith can be trusted, and whether Moscow is staging everything. A source is never judged only by the information offered. Officers study motive, timing, access, emotional pressure, and possible deception. The film reveals the uncomfortable side of human intelligence, where love may be real, manipulation may also be real, and both can exist at once. Judith therefore becomes both a person and a possible channel, watched by officers who cannot separate emotion from access. Number 16. Defense of the Realm, 1985. Defense of the Realm approaches British intelligence through a newspaper reporter who discovers that the story placed in his hands may have been designed for him. Gabriel Byrne plays Nick Mullen, an ambitious journalist investigating a member of parliament linked to an East German contact. The scandal looks like an easy front-page victory, until Mullen finds connections to a near-nuclear accident at an American airbase and signs of a government cover-up. The film shows information operations rather than simple spying. A service does not always hide a fact by locking it away. It can release a different fact, guide a reporter toward the wrong suspect, and let the press destroy someone who can carry the blame. Mullen thinks he is exposing power, but he may be repeating a story power selected for him. The most memorable sequence comes when Mullen confronts a senior figure at a private club. Plain-clothed men quietly take control. There is no dramatic announcement. He is moved, questioned, warned, and returned to the street with almost nothing he can prove. Later, his flat is searched, showing how easily private space becomes part of an investigation. The film presents influence, classification, friendly journalists, legal pressure, and selective leaks as weapons. It also shows why intelligence scandals are difficult to report. The service owns the complete file, while the reporter sees fragments. By the time Mullen understands the pattern, the official version has already reached the public. Mullen learns that a planted truth can mislead as effectively as a complete fabrication. Number 15. The Whistleblower, 1986. The Whistleblower shows British intelligence through a father who never asked to enter it. Michael Caine plays Frank Jones, a retired naval officer whose son Bob works as a Russian-language translator at GCHQ. Bob becomes disturbed by the fear inside the organization after suspicions arise that a Soviet mole may be among the staff. Colleagues watch one another, private conversations are recorded, and loyalty must be constantly proved. When Bob dies in suspicious circumstances, Frank refuses to accept the official explanation. His investigation leads through civil servants, security officers, and former spies who speak politely while hiding important facts. The film understands that secrecy protects operations, but it can also protect careers and mistakes. One memorable sequence takes place around London's railway system, where platforms and tunnels become tools of surveillance. Frank is not pursued by colorful villains. He is followed by men who blend into crowds, communicate quietly, and know his route before he arrives. The lack of spectacle makes the danger believable. Although the story focuses on Ji-Chu rather than MI6, it reveals the wider machine supporting foreign operations. Translators, intercept analysts, investigators, and liaison officers may never meet a field source, yet their work decides which warning reaches the government. The film also shows pressure created by intelligence sharing with allies. Officials worry not only about a leak, but about how American partners will react. Protecting the institution can become more important than protecting the employee who discovered the problem. The state's calm manners make its pressure harder to challenge. Number 14. Official Secrets, 2019. Official Secrets brings spying into the age of email, shared databases, and political pressure. Keira Knightley plays Catherine Gunn, a translator at GCHQ, who receives a classified request connected to an American plan to gather compromising information on United Nations diplomats before the Iraq invasion. She believes it is being used to push nations toward a decision they might not otherwise support. Gunn leaks the memo, but the film does not turn her into an action hero. She works, worries about colleagues being blamed, confesses, faces questioning, and watches lawyers argue over what she may say in court. Modern intelligence power appears through classification rules, employment pressure, and the Official Secrets Act rather than physical force. The most memorable sequence follows journalists verifying the document. A computer spell check changes American spelling into British spelling, giving critics a reason to call the memo fake. The newsroom must locate the original and prove the contents are genuine. A tiny technical detail nearly destroys a major story. The film is not mainly about MI6, but it shows the signals intelligence and political environment in which MI6 operates. Information moves between allied services, officials decide how it may be used, and analysts can see plans before lawmakers debate them. Intelligence employees can face two loyalties: obedience to the state and responsibility for what the state does with their work. Gunn cannot satisfy both. The danger is not only unlawful collection, it is the quiet transformation of technical capability into political leverage without public consent. Number 13. Operation Mincemeat, 2021. Operation Mincemeat shows British intelligence succeeding through a carefully written false life. During the Second World War, officers planned to mislead Germany about the Allied invasion of Sicily. They place false documents on a body dressed as a Royal Marine officer, release it near Spain, and allow the papers to reach German intelligence through channels Britain already understands. The team creates Major William Martin as a complete person. He needs receipts, keys, a photograph of a sweetheart, private letters, and signs of ordinary life. These details, known as pocket litter, matter because enemy investigators will examine the small things before believing the large secret. The film's famous sequence comes when the planners build Martin's identity around a photograph and a love letter from the invented woman named Pam. The room briefly feels like writers creating a character. That is the point. Deception works when the target emotionally accepts the story, not merely when documents look official. The body is released from a submarine carrying papers suggesting Greece and Sardinia are the real targets. The film shows intelligence combining bureaucracy, imagination, forensic detail, diplomatic contacts, and knowledge of enemy habits. It also admits uncertainty. Once the package enters Spain, success depends on other people behaving as predicted. Operation Mincemeat reveals that a major victory may begin with filing cabinets, photographs, and one believable lie supported by many minor truths. Even the invented girlfriend matters because personal clutter makes the official papers feel accidental rather than planted. Number 12. The Courier, 2020. The Courier tells the true story of Greville Wynne, a British businessman recruited to carry information from Soviet officer Oleg Penkovsky in the early 1960s. Benedict Cumberbatch plays Wynne as ordinary, social, and slightly excited by secret work. Those qualities make him useful. An MI6 officer meeting Penkovsky in Moscow would attract attention, while a salesman has a natural reason to travel and exchange packages. Wynne is not told everything. His handlers give him only enough information for each task. That is compartmentalization, limiting knowledge so one arrest cannot expose the operation. He carries documents while maintaining normal business behavior, but repeated travel slowly increases suspicion. The film's most memorable scene takes place during Swan Lake in Moscow. Wynne and Penkovsky sit among the audience, surrounded by beauty, while both understand the operation may be closing around them. Wynne's quiet reaction says more than an action scene. He no longer sees Penkovsky only as a source, but as a friend whose family is in danger. That creates the central problem. A service wants an agent to build trust, yet too much loyalty can challenge operational decisions. When officials decide the risk is too high, Wynn wants to return and help Penkovsky escape. The film shows cover travel, miniature cameras, secret signals, allied cooperation, and the cost when surveillance catches up. It also explains why MI6 uses civilians. The safest courier may be the person who looks least like a spy. His normal family life is part of the cover and part of the risk. Number 11. The Russia House, 1990. The Russia House begins with something intelligence services desire and fear, an unexpected offer of major secrets. Sean Connery plays Barley Scott Blair, a British publisher with no intelligence training. A Soviet manuscript containing claims about nuclear weakness passes through the publishing world, and British intelligence decides Barley may be the only person who can reach the scientist behind it. Before sending him to Moscow, officers question Barley, study his relationship with Katya, and teach him specific questions. The Americans become involved because the information could reshape nuclear policy. Intelligence officers want clean answers that fit their system, while Barley understands that pushing too hard may endanger Katya and destroy the trust that produced the manuscript. The most memorable scenes take place during safe house examinations. Barley faces repeated questions, recording equipment, and experts judging his reliability. The rooms are quiet, but the pressure is severe. Every answer is tested not only for truth, but for whether it supports assumptions already held by the service. The film becomes a strong portrait of source validation. A document can be genuine while its author is manipulated. A source can tell the truth, but misunderstand the wider situation. An agency can reject accurate intelligence because it threatens policy. Barley realizes that the people behind the operation matter more to him than the strategic prize. The Russia House shows MI6 using a civilian as an access agent, sharing material with the CIA, and facing a conflict between collecting intelligence and protecting the source. Policy needs can quietly shape what experts call credible. Number 10. Our Kind of Traitor, 2016. Our Kind of Traitor shows how MI6 turns an accidental contact into an unofficial operation. Ewan McGregor plays Perry, a lecturer vacationing in Morocco with his wife. He meets Dima, a Russian money manager who believes his criminal employers plan to remove him and his family after taking control of the accounts he manages. Dima chooses Perry as a messenger to British intelligence. The recruitment begins during a tennis match. Dima tests Perry's character, draws him into the family circle, and hands him a memory device containing names and financial evidence. Perry is useful because the meeting appears accidental. He has no official connection to MI6 and can return to London without looking like part of an intelligence channel. The most memorable scene is the questioning after Perry delivers the device. Officers separate facts from impressions, examine Dima's approach, and test whether the material may be a trap. MI6 officer Hector wants the case, but senior figures hesitate because the evidence may expose wealthy British interests. The operation is shaped by internal permission, not only danger abroad. The film captures a basic truth about source handling. An agency cannot promise rescue simply because someone offers valuable information. It must judge access, credibility, political cost, extraction routes, and danger to the source's family. Perry becomes emotionally committed while the service remains divided. Modern intelligence here is a mixture of finance, organized crime, unofficial helpers, and officers working near the edge of authorization because the official system prefers not to see the problem. Number 9. The Tailor of Panama, 2001. The Tailor of Panama offers one of cinema's clearest warnings about bad intelligence. Pierce Brosnan plays Andy Osnard, an MI6 officer sent to Panama after professional misconduct. He identifies Harry Pendle, a respected tailor with a hidden criminal past, as someone who can be pressured into becoming a source. Pendle knows politicians and business leaders because they talk freely while he measures their suits. Osnard does not patiently build a reliable network. He demands dramatic information that will impress London. Pendle, frightened and eager to please, invents a secret resistance movement and turns ordinary acquaintances into political players. Osnard reshapes those inventions into reports that senior officials want to believe. The film's famous sequence is the briefing where Pendle's stories stop being private lies and become government planning. Names appear on charts, imagined threats become operational facts, and officials discuss action against a network that does not exist. Each level adds confidence while removing doubt. By the time the report reaches powerful people, the original source is almost invisible. This is intelligence circularity and source contamination. A weak claim passes through several offices, returns in polished form, and appears confirmed because multiple people repeat it. The film also shows a handler controlling a source through shame, money, and fear. Osnard's reports are rewarded because they are exciting, not true. When leaders demand a threat, ambitious officers and frightened sources may manufacture one. The result can move governments, even though it began as a lie told in a fitting room. Number 8. The Fourth Protocol, 1987. The Fourth Protocol combines a large Cold War plot with careful procedural detail. Michael Caine plays John Preston, a British intelligence officer who discovers signs that Soviet operative Valery Petrovsky is assembling a nuclear device inside Britain. The plan is meant to make the explosion appear connected to an American base, creating public anger, damaging NATO, and influencing British politics. Components enter the country separately, hidden inside ordinary objects and carried by people who know only their own task. Petrovsky receives instructions through controlled meetings and follows strict routines. This is compartmentalization in its darkest form. Even if one courier is stopped, that person cannot explain the whole plot. The film's memorable scenes show Petrovsky calmly collecting and assembling the device, piece by piece. There is no giant enemy headquarters. The operation hides inside rented rooms, quiet streets, and normal travel. Preston's investigation also begins with fragments, an unusual theft, suspicious material, and links that senior officers initially dismiss. The movie separates foreign espionage from domestic security. MI6 normally collects abroad, while MI5 handles threats inside Britain, and Preston's work resembles counterintelligence. Yet the services overlap when a foreign operation reaches British soil. The film also captures bureaucratic risk. Preston has angered superiors and cannot automatically make the institution believe him. Evidence must move through rank, rivalry, and procedure before action begins. Preventing the operation depends less on heroic instinct than on recognizing small anomalies and proving that they form a pattern. The case grows because Preston keeps linking dull evidence that others prefer to treat as unrelated. Number 7. Funeral in Berlin, 1966. Funeral in Berlin follows Harry Palmer into one of intelligence work's most dangerous promises, helping an enemy officer defect. Soviet Colonel Stoke, responsible for security near the Berlin Wall, claims he wants to escape and asks for British help. Palmer must examine the offer, arrange an extraction, and decide whether Stoke is sincere or building a trap. A defection is never a simple rescue. The source may want money, safety, revenge, or a new identity. The receiving service must verify access, plan transport, protect the route, and consider whether the defector is feeding disinformation. Palmer deals with criminals, Israeli intelligence, forged papers, and competing agendas because official officers cannot openly perform every part of the job. The famous sequence centers on a coffin used in the escape plan. A funeral provides a believable reason to cross controlled territory, while the coffin creates a hiding place guards may hesitate to examine. Yet the operation becomes a chain of substitutions and betrayals. The object meant to hide one person may hide another, and every participant knows only part of the arrangement. Palmer does not control the board. He negotiates with people who lie, follows orders from superiors who withhold information, and discovers that allied interests do not always match. The operation is built from cover stories, intermediaries, timing, border routines, and greed. Funeral in Berlin shows MI6 as one player buying access inside a secret marketplace. The hardest question is not how to cross the wall, but who is really coming across, and who benefits when the plan succeeds. Number 6. The Ipcress File, 1965. The Ipcress File was created as the anti-Bond spy film. Michael Caine's Harry Palmer wears glasses, shops for groceries, argues about expenses, and works in offices where paperwork matters as much as field action. He joins a small counterintelligence unit investigating the disappearance and strange return of important British scientists. His superiors give him limited information, while departments compete instead of cooperating. Palmer follows files, photographs, code words, surveillance reports, and small inconsistencies. He also discovers that intelligence has a class system. Senior officers expect obedience, while Palmer's working-class background makes him useful and distrusted. He notices details because he is not fully accepted by the institution. The film's famous scene is the conditioning sequence. Palmer is held while distorted sounds, repeated images, and the word Ipcress are used to break his resistance. He survives not through a gadget, but by secretly driving a nail into his hand to keep hold of reality. Psychological pressure becomes more frightening than a physical contest. The operation reveals the danger of penetration. The enemy does not merely steal documents. It reaches into the British system, identifies valuable people, and exploits rivalry between departments. Palmer cannot assume an order is safe because it comes from a superior. Intelligence officers work inside chains of trust, and once one link is compromised, normal procedure becomes a weapon. The IPCRES file shows surveillance, source payments, file analysis, and controlled access with a dry realism that makes Bond's freedom look childish. Even Palmer's small expense claims remind us that real operations answer to budgets and supervisors. Number 5. The Deadly Affair, 1967. The Deadly Affair begins with a painfully ordinary task. British intelligence officer Charles Dobbs interviews Foreign Office official Samuel Fenton after an anonymous accusation links him to earlier communist activity. The conversation appears friendly, and Dobbs sees no urgent threat. Hours later, Fenton is found dead, and the service seems ready to close the matter. Dobbs notices one contradiction. While visiting Fenton's widow, a scheduled telephone wake-up call arrives. She claims it was arranged for her, but the explanation does not fit. That domestic detail becomes the thread pulling apart the official story. It is the film's most memorable scene because intelligence analysis begins with attention, not action. Dobbs continues even as colleagues encourage him to stop. He uses retired police officer Mendel for quiet inquiries, studies personal relationships, and follows the possibility that Fenton touched a deeper network. The case also damages Dobbs's private life, where trust has already been weakened. Adapted from John le Carré's first novel, the film presents counterintelligence as patient examination of people under pressure. A source may be moved by ideology, fear, loyalty, or an old wound unrelated to money. Dobbs reconstructs lies from timing, behavior, phone calls, and conflicting accounts. The film also shows institutional reluctance. Once a service accepts a convenient explanation, reopening the file threatens reputations. Real intelligence work often depends on the officer willing to ask why one tiny fact refuses to match the rest. His strength is not certainty. It is his refusal to let authority erase a contradiction. Number 4. The Human Factor, 1979. The Human Factor may be the least glamorous MI6 film ever made, which is why it feels convincing. Nicol Williamson plays Maurice Castle, a quiet middle-ranking officer in the service's African section. He has a South African wife, a child, a suburban home, and the appearance of a dependable civil servant. When evidence suggests a leak in his department, Security Officer Daintree must find the mole. Senior officials compare access, class background, habits, and weaknesses. They plant controlled information to see where it travels. Suspicion falls on Castle's colleague Arthur Davis, partly because his lifestyle makes him easy to dislike. The service begins treating an assumption as evidence. The film's most disturbing sequence involves a quiet decision to remove the suspected leak without a public trial. An ordinary drink and a polite office become part of a fatal internal measure. Nobody behaves like a movie villain. Officials use calm language about protecting the organization, which makes the scene colder. Castle is actually passing information for personal reasons connected to people who once helped his wife. His motive is not simple ideology. Background checks can identify risk, but they cannot fully measure gratitude, love, guilt, or private loyalty. The film also shows how secrecy weakens accountability. A mistake can be hidden because admitting it would expose the service. By the time security understands whom it misjudged, the institution has harmed the wrong man. This is espionage as office procedure, where a signature may be more dangerous than a weapon. Daintree's doubts arrive too late to protect anyone. Number 3. The Looking Glass War, 1970. The Looking Glass War shows what happens when an intelligence service wants a mission more than it can properly run one. British officials receive uncertain evidence that a new missile system may exist in East Germany. Their department has lost influence, resources, and experienced field officers, but senior men see the operation as a chance to prove they still matter. They recruit Lyser, a Polish refugee who worked as an agent during the war. He is brave and knows the region, but his skills are outdated. The service gives him rushed radio training, a cover story, and equipment, then sends him across the border. Younger Officer Avery sees the weaknesses but cannot stop leaders attached to old methods. The most memorable section is Lyser's preparation. He struggles with the radio while trainers repeat procedures that should take months to master. The failure is built step by step. Everyone can see he is not ready, yet the machine continues because canceling would mean admitting the department has become weak. Once Lyser enters East Germany, support becomes uncertain and communication fails. The people in London remain surrounded by files and maps, while the recruited man faces the consequences alone. Headquarters can describe an agent as an asset and gradually forget he is a person. The Looking Glass War exposes poor preparation, rivalry, wishful analysis, and pressure to produce intelligence that justifies a department's existence. The operation is already broken before Lizer crosses the border. The tragedy comes from institutional pride, not from a brilliant enemy plan. Number 2. Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, 2011. Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy turns MI6 into a locked room where one senior man secretly serves Moscow. Gary Oldman plays George Smiley, an intelligence veteran forced into retirement after a failed operation damages the service, known as the Circus. He is quietly brought back when evidence suggests a Soviet mole has reached the highest level. Smiley cannot investigate openly because any official request may alert the traitor. He builds a tiny team, uses old files, interviews former officers, traces payments, and compares memories of operations that appeared unrelated. Compartmentalization is used in reverse. The mole survived because each department held only a piece. Smiley becomes dangerous by assembling those pieces outside normal channels. The film's most memorable scene is Smiley's story about meeting Soviet spy master Karla. Smiley tried to persuade Karla to defect, but Karla noticed Smiley's personal weakness and kept a cigarette lighter engraved by Smiley's unfaithful wife. The quiet scene explains how intelligence officers study emotional wounds and use them later. The hunt is shaped by institutional vanity. Leaders want spectacular Soviet information and ignore warnings that the source may be controlled. Success becomes proof of loyalty, while doubt appears disloyal. Smiley wins through patience, memory, file work, surveillance, and understanding how colleagues lie. The greatest threat to MI6 may not enter the building. It may already have an office, a title, and the confidence of everyone in charge. The final exposure is handled quietly, because the service wants control, not a public spectacle that would reveal its own failure. Number 1. The Spy Who Came In From the Cold, 1965. The Spy Who Came In From the Cold is the clearest rejection of James Bond ever filmed. Richard Burton plays Alec Leamas, a worn British officer whose East German network has been destroyed. After one final agent fails to cross the Berlin Wall, London gives Leamas a new role. He must appear bitter, broken, and ready to betray Britain, so East German intelligence will recruit him. The operation is built through controlled decline. Leamas leaves the service, drinks heavily, loses work, and serves time after a public incident. Each event strengthens his cover. Enemy recruiters approach because they believe they discovered a damaged man, not because he offered himself too neatly. British intelligence turns his real exhaustion into operational material. The famous climax at the Berlin Wall reveals the deception. Leamas believed he was helping remove East German official Mundt. Instead, the operation protects Mundt, who secretly serves Britain, by discrediting the honest officer investigating him. Liz, an innocent woman drawn into the case, becomes expendable because her testimony threatens the plan. An officer may know his task, but not its true purpose. A valuable source may be protected even when that protection destroys other people. Headquarters controls information so tightly that its own field officer becomes part of the deception. Leamas finally understands that both sides use ideals as cover for similar methods. There are no clean victories, only assets saved, witnesses sacrificed, and files closed. It shows intelligence as organized betrayal, carried out by tired people who never see the entire board. So, which of these films came closest to destroying the James Bond myth for you? British intelligence on screen is most believable when the offices are quiet, the orders are incomplete, and the hero discovers he was never controlling the mission. Share your pick in the comments, like the video, and subscribe for more forgotten films that reveal the darker side of history. Until next time, remember, the calmest person in the room may be hiding the most dangerous secret.